I just got done watching The Reasonable Doubt Season 3 finale, Episode 10, and oh my God, I am blown away. 10 over 10 season finale in my opinion. But overall, I'm going to tell you what I really loved about this episode and just a few gripes that I had about the episode as well. If you're new here, my name is Brandi, and please go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you do enjoy watching TV show reviews and also movie reviews. Now, what I loved about this episode, guys, is the twist. Oh my God, I am so glad that Kristen was not the killer. That would have been so anticlimactic. Now, the writers did a very good job all season long, but especially this episode with certain parallels, right? Like, for instance, the way Jax met Eddie outside of that famous funeral home on Crenshaw. And then that's the same funeral home that Ozzie ended up having his funeral service at. And both Ozzie and her father were drug addicts. And also, I might be tripping for this one, but the way soon after Ozzie passed away and Dr. Autumn had her baby, that baby looked like Ozzie. Did anybody see that? When they showed that little baby girl, she got lips just like Ozzie. She light-skinned. And I'm like, that is a beautiful parallel. Like, are they just trying to show a rebirth? Like, that is just great storytelling to me. Now, what I did not like about the episode is, for one, the dad. I'm happy that the dad was the killer. I thought that was a super dope twist. But I don't like how he got balls all of a sudden at the end of the season. All throughout this season, Ozzie's mom was always bossing him around. And he was just weak, right? But now, all of a sudden, he was a gangster. But I don't know if it's necessary that he had to have a change in personality. And lastly, what I didn't like was the side storylines. Like, really? I mean, the one storyline, Jax, Chelsea, and Eddie, I mean, that was like whoop-de-doo. Like, not a reveal at all. Very boring side story. Also, the story with Lewis and his employee Sam, I mean, I could have did without that story as well. And lastly, the whole Bill situation, right? I'm still debating how I feel about that storyline. It's pretty good. That's probably the best side storyline out of all three. Now, before I go into a recap, guys, comment down below. Let me know what you thought about this finale. Were you shocked? Were you saddened? I could definitely tell you that I am super sad about Ozzie. I was not expecting Ozzie to die. I did not see that coming. I didn't also expect the dad to be the murderer as well. If you guys watched all of my Reasonable Doubt videos, you know what suspects I had on my list, right? And as of the last episode, the dad was off of my suspect list. So I was shocked and I was pleased with that twist. So the finale opened up with Daniel talking to Kristen on the porch of the cabin. And he asked her, Kristen, did you kill Wendy? And she sadly says, well, Daniel, I'll tell you everything. And then we see a flashback of when Ozzie was arguing with his mom, Rosie, when he was firing his parents as his manager. And then Rosie showed him the sex tape of Wendy having relations with another man. And then we finally get to see the full Ozzie and Wendy argument once Ozzie confronted Wendy about the sex tape, which is so effed up when you think about it. All of this started over a fake sex tape that the mom had made. Now, what a effed up family. I wanted to see Ozzie's whole family in jail, including Kristen. Ozzie is arguing with Wendy, and he's screaming at her. She's screaming at him back, and he's like, who is this you were reverse cowgirling on? And he lays on the bed, he unbuckles his belt, and he's like, come do it to me. Come reverse cowgirl on me. And she's like, Ozzie, what's wrong with you? Are you high? You must be crazy to believe her. Wendy goes on to say that Rosie is a liar. Rosie is manipulating him, and she storms out. And that's the part we saw. We saw where they were actually arguing outside of Ozzie's house. So we see that Wendy goes in her car. Ozzie goes back into the house. But shortly after he goes back into the house, no other than Monica comes knocking knock at the door. And Ozzie has his shirt off, right? And Monica, she's trying to talk to him and she touches his chest. And I think he kind of like jerked away from her. And it caused Monica's nails to scratch his chest. So now we find out that the scratches on Ozzie's chest came from Monica accidentally. And Ozzie's super upset. He's just frustrated that Monica is there. So he sends her along her merry little way. And then we see Ozzie. He's sparking up. He's just smoking some weed, right? But then Alex comes through with the real stuff. And Alex says to Ozzie pretty much like, listen, I'm so glad, you know, that you're back doing drugs, right? Because you're paying my rent for this month. And by the way, where's your warden? Since you've been with Wendy, you haven't been been like copping from me. You know, where Wendy at? And Ozzie says she's probably somewhere with a stick in her mouth, right? And Alex is like, word up? Like, Alex is shocked. And then Ozzie, he pulls out his phone. And I don't know if he got like a notification on his phone or if he simply looked up Wendy's location, but he found out that Wendy was at his family's cabin. And Alex is pretty much like, okay, well, let's go pull up. And I'm in my head like, wait, did Ozzie know where the location of the cabin was? On the stand, was he lying? Did he actually know? Or does he just know because, you know, he just tracked Wendy's location? But anyway, Alex tells Ozzie to airdrop him the location and that they'll take a drive to the cabin to see what Wendy's up to. But we see that Ozzie leaves his phone behind. And I believe that he left it behind accidentally. I don't think he left it behind intentionally. So Ozzie and Alex, they pull up to the cabin and Kristen runs out and she's very hesitant to let Ozzie inside. But Ozzie does go inside the cabin and he sees Wendy tied up with rope to the chair and she's blindfolded. And he also sees that his sister has a strap out. And Ozzie is like, what the F is going on here? What the F is going on? But he's so high and disoriented and out of his mind, he can't even help Wendy out. And then the flashback stops right there because Daniel tells Kristen, hey, the verdict is in, we gotta go. So Kristen apparently told Daniel the rest of the story in the car. And we do know that Daniel told Jax the story not too long later. So I'll just continue with the flashback, but just know that it was some cuts in between. So back at the cabin, when the flashback continues, we see Ozzie again. He's barely trying to help Wendy because he's so out of it, but he touches her head and he notices blood on his hands. And not too long after that, he ends up passing out. So Kristen, she runs to his aid. She's trying to help him out. But meanwhile, Wendy escaped and she ran outside. So Kristen, she grabs the strap. She runs after Wendy and she ends up shooting Wendy. And we hear Alex scream out, yo, what the F, right? And then from what we heard from the story that Daniel told Jax is that Kristen told Alex, like, listen, be quiet, don't say anything, and I'll pay you off. And then we see in the flashback that Kristen, she loaded Ozzie into the car. She takes him back home, which was unbelievable. Ozzie is so heavy. Like, it's so hard to carry a passed out individual. But that's how I knew right then and there that this might not be the real story and that we might be getting a twist later on in the episode. Now, once we're inside of the courtroom and the verdict is about to be read, and I'm anticipating Ozzie to be not guilty, and he was, thankfully. Everybody cheered. Everybody's so happy. Ozzie hugs Bill. He hugs Jax, and he says, thank you so much. And Jax says, hey, I was just doing my job. And he's like, no, you weren't. Pretty much, she went so above and beyond for Ozzie, and Ozzie knows this, and Ozzie appreciates that. So after Ozzie is found not guilty, we see them celebrating at Jax's law firm. And Kristen rushes in, and she tells Ozzie sorry that she wasn't able to make it for the verdict. And then Jax is having a conversation with Ozzie right afterwards, and she's like, listen, you must be feeling a little bit emotional right now. And he's like, listen, that is an understatement. And then Jax invites him to a family dinner on Sunday. And he says, listen, like, pretty much I would come, but I'm having my own celebration at the crib. That's when we see Daniel grab Jax and he says to Jax, listen, I gotta tell you something. And Daniel tells Jax the story of Kristen killing Wendy. And Daniel asked Jax, like, listen, what do we do? Do we call the cops and let them know? And she's like, listen, let's just let Ozzie enjoy his weekend. Let him enjoy his win and celebrate. And we'll tell him after the weekend is over. So let's take a moment to talk about Bill. While they were in the office celebrating Ozzie's win, Bill had a conversation with the partners. And the partners are congratulating Bill, like, great job on the Ozzie Edwards case. And Bill is giving all of the credit to Jax. He's like, listen, that's all Jax. You know, I was second chair. Like, I barely didn't do anything. And Vince and Steve, the partners, say to him, like, listen, well, what do we need you for if Jax did everything? So Bill, in that moment, was trying to get Vince and Steve to put some respect on Jax's name, but they weren't having it. And apparently, it was a lot of conversations going on off camera that we didn't get to see that leads to what happens at the end when Bill does become partner, but we'll get back to that shortly. Now, let's talk about Louis and Sam. I might just get this storyline out of the way right now because, again, this was so not interesting to me. But we see that Louis is talking to one of his employees, a young lady. I didn't really catch her name, but they're having a conversation about Sam and how he's not delivering. And then the girl says to Louis, like, listen, are you going to fire him? And he was like, well, I can't fire him right now because he got a baby on the way. And she's like, what do you mean? Because Sam is always bragging about his Tinder account, right? So right then and there, Louis realized that he's being played. So he just told the young lady to give Sam some work for right now until he has time to figure things out. So now we see Sam come into Louis's office. Mind you, this is like scenes later, right? But Sam comes into the office and Louis tells him that he's letting him go. And Sam is kind of like, joke's on you. You know, I'm trying to beat the system. Yeah, I didn't have the credentials or the qualifications for this job, but it didn't stop me from getting a few checks. And now I could file a lawsuit against you guys for a wrongful firing, something to that effect. Again, guys, I only watched this episode one time just now, but something to that effect. Sam was trying to set Louis up, but Louis flipped the script on him like, listen, you know, I understand you trying to beat the system, but at the same time, you playing me, and I'm a black man that's really out here legit just trying to make it. But Louis, he has all of his ducks in a row, and everything that Sam is saying, you know, as far as that lawsuit talk, Louis is able to refute. So Louis officially fires him, and security comes in to escort Sam out. Semi-interesting storyline, but again, I don't know the purpose of that. Like, I could have did without that storyline this season, but maybe in season 4, we'll get some more clarity into why we even needed to see that part. Now we see Jax at home with Louis, and they're about to have a double date with Corey and his girlfriend, played by Essence Atkins. Well, his fiance now. And Louis, he's kind of cold towards Morris Chestnut at first, right? Until he finds out that him and his girl are engaged. So I guess he was looking at Corey, aka Morris Chestnut, as a threat. But anyway, during this whole double date situation, which was probably a scene that we didn't need either, but Corey divulges to Jax that the partners are indeed trying to play her. He tells her that the last time he was in LA, he went to go have drinks with Vince and Steve, and they offered him a position at the law firm. And they also mentioned to him something to the effect of they could buy Jax out of her position. In a nutshell, you know, Corey just reiterates what Jax has been feeling all along, that these partners are trying to play her and that she really needs to jump ship. Now we see Jax and Chelsea meet up, and Chelsea is telling Jax that Eddie is only back in her life because he wants to get money out of her. And Jax is like, well, why are you telling me this? And Chelsea is like, because I believe you deserve to know the truth, and plus I want a relationship with you. And Jax is like, well, why do you want a relationship with me? Like, you don't even know me. And Chelsea is like, yeah, I know I don't know you, but you're my sister, you know, so I want to have a relationship with you. But you could tell all along that Jax was clocking it. She was clocking that Chelsea is not a real one either. And at that point, it's like she really didn't know what to believe. But then Jax meets with Eddie right in front of the funeral home. Again, the same funeral home that we see Ozzy's funeral service being held out. Oh my God, rest in peace, Ozzie. Rest in peace. But Jax asked Eddie, like, listen, are you only here to get money from me? And Eddie is trying to place all of the blame on Chelsea. He's not really taking much accountability at all. But you can tell that Jax is so heartbroken and she doesn't know what to believe at this point. Like, should she continue this relationship with her dad? Should she believe Chelsea? And at the end, she just tells him that they just need some space for now and that she just needs time to figure it all out. But she tells him that she wanted to meet him at that funeral home because all of the years that she didn't hear from him, that she thought that one day she would just find him at the funeral home dead because he was a drug addict. Now we see Ozzie. He's celebrating at his crib and his boy Cordell comes over like, congratulations on your win and you deserve this. And he slides Ozzie some drugs, right? And Ozzie, he declines it right there on the spot. Well, I guess he still kept it in his hand, but he tells him like, listen, you know, kind of like that's not my vibe right now. And I don't need to be here at this point. And then it cuts and we see that Ozzie shows up to Jax's house for the Sunday dinner that she invited him to. All is going well at the dinner. They're all enjoying themselves, having a good time. And then Mama Lou is leaving out and I'm happy to see Mama Lou. She looks like she's recovering nicely. And Spencer is going to Mama Lou's house for the evening. So right now we just see that it's Jax and Ozzie left. And it was at this point that I'm like, oh my God. It's going to be Ozzie that Jax finds in Spencer's room. But Jax is having a heart-to-heart conversation with Ozzie, and she informs him that, listen, you really need to go to rehab. In fact, I called 2 intake professionals, and they're on their way to admit you into rehab. And I'm like, what the F? Jax, you cannot just break that information to somebody like that. Like, oh my God. I believe Jax, she really had good intentions. Obviously, she's a great person. However, to tell him right then and there that the intake professionals were on their way to take him away, I think that was a bit much. And I think Jax was a little bit out of line for that, but I have a lot of empathy for her. Well, I have done the same thing. No, I think she should have kind of eased him into it. Maybe had an initial conversation with him, and maybe on a subsequent conversation, maybe call some intake professionals over. But damn, I think that was a lot for him to handle. In fact, it was too much, because we see then that she tells Ozzie just to take a moment, go into Spencer's room, clear his mind, get ready. And then the intake professionals knock on the door, and Jax goes upstairs to summon Ozzie. He doesn't open the door. She opens the door and she finds him passed out on the floor, and she is crying. She is screaming, and I wanted to scream too. I actually wanted to cry during the scene. It was actually very emotional. Seeing Ozzie just lay out on the floor like that after everything he's been through. He was trying. He really was, man. I don't think Ozzie deserved to die. But nonetheless, that's exactly what happened. He did pass away, but as they were taking Ozzie away in an ambulance and Jax had his belongings, she found like a piece of paper balled up in his pocket, and she opens up the piece of paper and it says shit to do. And it was a list of stuff for Ozzie to do, things that she mentioned to him on a stand that he's never done. For instance, grocery shopping, go to the amusement park with friends, like just doing adult stuff. So seeing that list made it very emotional for Jax and for us as the audience members, because again, Ozzie was trying to get on the right path. He really was. That list just proves that he was trying to get his shit together. And now it's the day of Ozzie's funeral. Very sad, very sad. So we see Ozzie's casket being brought out of the funeral home, and we see Monica in the crowd, and Monica gives Jax like a crazy look right then and there. We should have known something was coming later in the episode. But nonetheless, we see a lot of conversations happening after the funeral. We see that Jax talks to Ozzie's mom, and Ozzie's mom tells Jax, like, listen, you won. Well, what did I win? And Rosie is like, I invited Ozzie over to have dinner after the trial, but he chose to go to your house and have dinner. And Jax pretty much just reads her like, listen, I didn't win anything. If anything, we all lost. And the person who lost the most is Ozzie. We also see Jax having a conversation with Bill. Bill popped up, and we see that Jax's son actually shaded Bill as well. And I didn't know that Spencer was, informed on all of the beef between Jax and Bill. But apparently the way he greeted Bill, he does know about all of the politics between Jax, Bill, and the law firm. We also see Jax have a conversation with Kristen, and Kristen says something to the effect of, I really thought Ozzie was going to be okay since we were both innocent. And Jax says, wait, you didn't kill Wendy? And Kristen, she tries to avoid the conversation, but Jax was pressing her, right? And so she said, Kristen, tell me what really happened. Now we see Kristen, she approaches her dad. She says, Dad, we need to talk. And Sal is like, talk about what? And Kristen is like, what happened to Wendy? I think we need to come clean, because there's people out there who really think that Ozzie did kill Wendy. Even though he was found not guilty, we have to protect his legacy. And Sal looked at her like, legacy? What legacy? And you were the one that was supposed to protect Ozzie. That's your one and only job, and you failed at it. And he tells Kristen, like, listen, none of you guys can even handle the issue at hand. Well, he doesn't say you guys. He says none of you bitches. Like, he calls his own daughter the B word, right? And then he says, I shut Wendy up. And Kristen says, well, what do you mean? And then we see a flashback of what really happened that night in the cabin. Well, it really started before the cabin, because Wendy went to confront Ozzie's mom. So she went to their household. The dad opened the door, and Wendy goes in the house screaming, where is Rosie? And the dad is like, calm down, lower your voice. And Wendy threatens to expose the family, and Wendy got a mouth on her. Oh my God, not victim blaming, but damn, she is a feisty one. And Sal says to her, before I let you get away with exposing my family, your mom will be planning your funeral. And then Wendy spits at him. Oh my God, you spit at him in his own house, girl. And he slaps her. I can't tell if it was an open hand slap or if he actually punched her. But she fell backwards and she hit her head on the table and she passed out. And then Kristen, she comes into the foyer. She sees what happened. And it seems like she wants to call the cops right there on the spot. And Sal is like, nah, man, get her legs. Let's carry her to the car. And Kristen is like, where are we taking her to? And then the scene cuts and we see that they took Wendy to the cabin. She's tied up on the chair. She's blindfolded. And that's when we see Ozzie. He comes into the cabin unexpectedly. He tries to help Wendy out a little bit. But again, he's disoriented, drugged out of his mind. He touches her hand. He sees and feels the blood on his hand. And this would just really explain why Ozzie kept having these flashbacks all season long and thought that he was the one that killed Wendy because he actually was there at the scene of the crime. But nonetheless, at the same moment that Ozzie is trying to help Wendy, he ends up passing out. So they're all freaking out. They're trying to find the Narcan. They're trying to get water for Ozzie. Meanwhile, Wendy gets out and she starts running outside. Sal, he is the one that actually grabbed the strap. He ran after Wendy and he shot Wendy. And Alex, he saw the whole thing. But Sal told Alex, like, listen, keep your mouth shut and we'll pay you any amount of money you need. So Sal, he continues to follow Wendy into the woods. And once he finds Wendy, Wendy is still popping off at the mouth. And Sal is asking Wendy once he caught her in the woods, like, what amount of money do you need to go away? And she's like, I'm not going away. I'm here to stay. I'm going to help Ozzie, and I'm still going to expose the family. Then we see that Sal, he covers Wendy's mouth and he essentially smothers her and she passes away. And then we see Sal, he just covers her body up and tries to hide it hurriedly, right? But actually let me back up a little bit. Before he ran to chase Wendy in the woods, he told Kristen very aggressively. And see, this is what I said I don't like, because we see a whole different dad now, right? We see a whole different Sal than we saw all throughout the whole season. Like, he was a whole gangster at the end of this episode. But anyway, he told Kristen to go clean up the shell casings, go clean up the scene of the crime, right? And she does it. And in this episode, I felt bad for Kristen too. Kristen is a victim the same way Ozzie was a victim. But anyway, after that flashback ends, we find out that Kristen was recording her dad confessing and the prosecutor was there and they caught everything that Sal said and they end up taking him away. And I'm like, take Kristen too. Because Kristen was complicit. She didn't have to let her brother go through that as well. Although, she's young, but she's not a child. She's not a minor. I believe that she's still an adult. I think she should go to jail. I still think that the mama should have went to jail. I think Dr. Gardner should go to jail. Remember Dr. Gardner? Somebody should have just got Ozzie help a lot sooner. Ozzie's blood is on all of their hands. It really, really is. But again, I was so happy that the killer was not Kristen. I'm so happy that it was the dad. Although I thought it was other people, you all know I had Kash Doll on my list. I had the dad on there too, but as of the last episode or two, that they had the dad looking real innocent, right? The dad was looking like he was not involved after the whole fake sex tape scenario, right? So very good job, because I love a good plot twist. But anyway, let's talk about the rest of the episode. We now see Daniel and Kristen. They're having a conversation. Daniel essentially breaks up with Kristen, says that he can't see her anymore. And we also see the whole situation between Bill, Jax, and the partners. We see Jax, she goes into her office and she sees that Bill, I'm about to call him Tommy. She sees that Bill. She sees that Bill is celebrating with Steve and Vince. And she walks in and they're toasting with champagne. And she's like, what's the occasion? And they're like, well, Bill just made partner here. And she's like, without my knowledge, without including me, without putting me in the loop. And they get real slick mouth and snarky with Jax in that moment. They say something to the effect of, they tell her about the acquisition. They tell her that with the acquisition that they don't need that many managing partners involved, and pretty much like they didn't need her input. And I just love how Jax just excused herself from that room. She excused herself from that room. She went into her own office and she's just looking around at all of her accolades. She goes to get a box and she starts packing up all of her stuff. Rightfully so. I am so glad that she is going to start her own firm. So it turns out with Bill, I do want to see Bill again next season though, right? And side note, guys, I am covering Force with Tommy starring in it. So make sure you check out those reviews too. But I want to see a little bit more of this storyline. This is the one storyline that was interesting to me because I was still like trying to figure Bill out, right? Because I don't think that Bill is evil. I just think that Bill is the type of guy that would do anything to get ahead. But anyway, we see Jax packing up her office and we see that she moves on. And we see that she's pulling up to the Stewart firm and she's with Lewis. She has the box in hand. They're walking in and Daniel is there too. And who walks in with a strap looking crazy? Monica. Monica has resurfaced there. I didn't even know that was Monica for a split second because she didn't have her wig on. She had like her cornrows on that you wear under the wig. She ain't have no makeup on. She had on all black and she just had the strap looking crazy. And Jax is like, no. And then we hear a pow, pow, pow. But we don't know who got shot or if anybody got shot. But if I had to guess who got shot, I don't even like guessing no more. Reasonable doubt. I don't. My guesses be so wrong. But anyway, I'm going to just have fun with it. If I had to guess, I would say that Monica would have been shooting towards Jax, because that's the one she really has to beef with, right? And I could imagine that Louis, Louis ain't that bad, for real. I hear a lot of people give him a bad rap. I kind of like Louis low-key, although they made him look very weak in season 3, but I definitely think that Louis would have jumped in front of that bullet to save his wife. So I think that if it's anybody that got shot, I think it's Louis. But again, I'm just speculating, guys. But anyway, not sure what else I missed. Oh yeah, we see Sally and Tommy go on another date. I'm like, girl, you still dealing with Bill after what he did to your friend? But maybe she doesn't look at it, like that, like Bill was being malicious. Maybe she's just looking at it like Bill's trying to get to the top. We saw Autumn. Autumn had her baby. Like I mentioned in the beginning, that baby looked just like Ozzie. What else did we see? A few other little small things, but I am so looking forward to season 4. This was a solid season finale. Again, I loved everything about it. I just didn't really like the side stories. But nonetheless, guys, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Turn on your notifications, guys. Watch another show with me, okay? Some other shows that I'm reviewing are All's Fair on Hulu. And I'm also reviewing Power Book Force 4 with Tommy in it, right? So make sure you check those out as well. Thank you for rocking with me this entire season. I love you all. See you next time. Peace.